Ibrahim Traore heard about the mine accident while finishing his morning briefing. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Once he saw the truth with his own eyes, there would be no turning back. The presidential palace in Ouagadougou was still quiet in the early morning. The heavy heat of the day hadn't arrived. Traore sat at his desk, going over security updates from the northern provinces, areas where danger was never far away. 8 months into his presidency, he had built a routine. Security briefings at dawn, economic matters by mid-morning, and foreign affairs later in the day. It was the rhythm of a country still trying to find its future. Defense Minister Kabore walked in without knocking, something he never did. That alone told Traore, "This was serious, Mr. President." "There's been an incident at the Busura mine," Kabore said, handing over a first report. 17 confirmed dead. Maybe more trapped inside. Traore quickly scanned the paper. The Busura mine, run by Goldtech International, a French and Canadian company, was the largest in the country. It produced nearly 40% of Burkina Faso's gold exports. The report said there had been an explosion, followed by part of a tunnel collapsing in the deepest section of the mine. "Rescue teams?" Traore asked, picking up his phone. "Goldtech has sent in their emergency unit," Kabore replied. "They've asked that our military and government stay clear so they can work without disruption." Traore looked up. "You don't sound like you agree." Kabore paused, then glanced at the door before speaking. "It may be nothing, sir, but my cousin works security at Busura. He called me directly. Off the record, he says company officials were seen burning documents before the emergency team even arrived." Traore set the paper down. His instincts, trained in the military and sharpened by months in power, kicked in fast. Something wasn't right. "Get transport ready," he said. "I'm going to Busura, sir," Kabore said, carefully. "Goldtech has clearly asked they don't run this country," Traore cut him off. "Or at least they shouldn't." Kabore nodded, a small smile forming. "Helicopter will be ready in 30 minutes. As he left, Traore walked to the window. The city below was waking up a mix of old buildings and new ones, street vendors and foreign businesses. The presidential palace itself was a leftover from French colonial days. It looked grand, but most people in the country still lived in poverty. Burkina Faso had gold, lots of it. It had even become the fastest growing gold producer in Africa. And yet, the people remained poor. The numbers didn't add up. And Traore, once a math teacher, had always hated equations that didn't make sense. Just then, an aide walked in. With an update, "Mr. President, the French ambassador, has urgently asked to meet you before you leave for Busura." Did he say why? Just that it's about protocol for incidents involving international companies. Traore looked at the clock. "Tell him I've already left. We can talk protocol after I've seen things for myself." 2 hours later, his helicopter approached the Busura mine deep in the northeast of the country. From above, the mine was huge plants. Buildings, worker compounds spread out across the dry landscape. In the middle, the mine's main entrance was surrounded by rescue trucks and security forces. As they circled to land, Traore noticed something else, a second helicopter, already on the ground, with French diplomatic markings. "The ambassador got here before the president," Traore said. "Interesting." On the ground, a group of men in hard hats rushed to meet them. Leading them was Philippe Marron, Goldtech's regional head. He was tall, older, and looked like someone who didn't get questioned often. Beside him stood Jean Laval, the French ambassador. "President Traore Marron said, offering a handshake, 'We weren't expecting you. Things are delicate right now with the rescue operation.' "Then I won't slow you down," Traore replied. "I'm here to see the rescue for myself and speak to survivors." Laval stepped in. "Mr. President, may I suggest we brief you? Inside, the site is dangerous. Better to speak in a controlled setting." Traore looked at him, calm but firm. "Ambassador, I didn't know mine safety was a diplomatic matter." Laval's smile faded just slightly. "France has a lot of mining experience. We're simply here to help." But Traore had already made up his mind. This wasn't just an accident. It was something much bigger. Before Traore could even respond, a loud commotion broke out near the mine entrance. Workers were rushing forward with a stretcher. Without a second thought, Traore walked straight toward them, ignoring the executives calling out behind him. On the stretcher lay a young miner, barely conscious. His face was caked in dark, wet dust. except for the tear tracks that had cleared streaks down his cheeks. A medic was checking his vitals, giving him oxygen. Traore knelt beside him. "What's your name, brother?" he asked softly. The miner's eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. When he finally recognized who was speaking, something clicked. "Rodrigo," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "Musa! Rodrigo! What happened down there, Musa?" The miner glanced nervously toward the Goldtech officials hovering nearby. Then, with surprising strength, he grabbed Traore's hand. "Not Section 7, he rasped. "They said it was Section 7, but it was Section 12. "They're lying." Martian stepped forward quickly. "He's in shock," the executive said. "Section 12 is inactive. Shut down for maintenance." "He's confused." But Traore didn't. "Look away," he held Musa's gaze. "Why would they lie?" he asked. "Why hide? Which section collapsed?" Musa leaned in closer, barely a whisper now. "The children," he said. "They don't want you to see the children." Before Traore could ask another question, the medics wheeled the stretcher away toward the ambulance. He turned slowly toward Martian. The executive's confident mask had started to crack. "I want to go down," Traore said, "to Section 12. Martian's answer was instant. "Absolutely not. It's unstable. We can't ensure your safety." "I wasn't asking for permission," Traore said flatly. Ambassador Laval stepped in, his tone more strained now. "Mr. President, this brings serious liability issues. The agreement between Goldtech and your government clearly limits interference." "During emergencies, show me where it says that," Traore replied. "Because I don't remember signing away my right to inspect a disaster on Burkinab soil." A long silence followed. Traore's security detail edged closer. Hands near their weapons, Goldtech's private guards mirrored the move. Finally, Martian forced a fake calm into his voice, perhaps a compromise. "We can show you surveillance footage from all active areas of the mine. Full transparency. No need to take unnecessary risks." "I'll review the footage," Traore said, "after I've seen Section 12 with my own eyes." Realizing the president wouldn't back down, Martian gave in. He ordered one of the mine engineers to escort them as they prepared the lift. Ambassador Laval made one final attempt. "Your predecessor understood how sensitive foreign investment is," he said quietly. "Keeping companies like Gold happy is what keeps the money flowing into Burkina Faso." Traore met his gaze. "My predecessor isn't president anymore," he said, "and now I understand why." The descent began. The elevator shook as it dropped deeper into the earth. The air got heavier with each second, hot, stale, filled with dust and something darker. Traore had been in caves, tunnels, bunkers, but nothing like this. This wasn't military. This was a different kind of war. The mine engineer, a young and clearly nervous Frenchman named Gerard, tried to explain. "We're passing through the main working zones," he said. "Section 12 is one of our oldest exploratory areas, but it's inactive, no current operations." "Then there should be no harm in showing it to me," Traore replied. Gerard hesitated. "It's just not normal procedure." "I know procedure," Traore said calmly. "I followed it for years before I became president." The elevator stopped to 700 meters underground. The doors opened to reveal a narrow, steel-reinforced tunnel. It was dim. The air smelled like smoke and metal. Breathing was already hard. "This is Section Ba," Gerard said, tapping his tablet. "The collapse happened in Section 7, just ahead." "We shouldn't go further." Traore turned to his military aide. "Captain, what section did the injured miner mention?" "Section 12, Mr. President." "And where is Section 12 from here?" Gerard shifted uncomfortably, "Down further, east of here. But I don't have clearance to bring you there." Traore studied a wall-mounted map of the tunnels. "Looks simple enough," he said. "We'll find it." "Sir, I really can't." "Allow Captain," Traore said, still looking at the map. "Please keep Mr. Gerard comfortable while we go inspect Section 12. The captain nodded, quietly but firmly. He positioned himself between the engineer and the nearest communication device, Gerard. Didn't try to stop them. Traore and two of his men moved into the tunnel. The air got thicker, the lights got dimmer, but they followed the signs deeper into the mine. Eventually, they reached another elevator, this one marked clearly, Sections 9 to 14. Authorized personnel only. They used Gerard's access card and descended again. When the doors opened, everything felt different. The walls were rougher, the supports thinner, the lights flickered. This part of the mine wasn't built for workers. It wasn't built for oversight. This wasn't just another mining zone. They were about to enter something no one was ever supposed to see. They weren't expecting a locked steel door. When Traore and his team reached what should have been the site of the collapse, they found something else instead, a heavy metal door with an electronic lock. The access card they had taken didn't work. "Break it open," Traore said calmly. His officers didn't hesitate for long. With a few heavy blows and combined strength, the lock gave way with a deep metallic groan. What they saw inside would stay with Traore for the rest of his life. This wasn't a mining zone, it was a prison. Section 12 was a hidden labor camp. Inside the massive underground room, dozens of sleeping mats lay scattered across the dusty floor. Empty food tins, plastic water bottles, and makeshift blankets told a quiet, awful story. But what chilled the room wasn't just the conditions, it was the size of the tools. Tiny helmets, small pickaxes, gloves made for children's hands. One of the officers whispered, "My God," Traore didn't T-speak. He began taking photos every corner, every detail, using his phone. In one corner, they found a logbook. The entries were cold and clinical. It listed worker names, their ages, and how much gold they were expected to bring out each day. Some were just 9 years old. "They're using children," Traore said, voice tight, "sending them into veins too small for adults." They were still exploring when they heard voices. Traore and his men quickly moved into the shadows. Hiding behind stacks of equipment, a group of Gold Tech security officers entered, led by a supervisor speaking into a radio. "We've cleared the chamber," he said. "No sign of survivors. The president won't find anything." A voice crackled back. "Martians, did you recover the missing workers?" "Negative. At least 15 kids fled into the tunnels after the blast. We're still searching." "Find them," Martian snapped. "They can't talk to anyone. You understand me?" That was enough. Traore stepped forward. His officers raised their weapons. "I believe those children are now under my protection," he said. The Gold Tech team froze. Slowly, they raised their hands. Traore picked up the radio. "Mr. Martian." By the time Traore surfaced, everything had changed. Word had already spread. A crowd had gathered: families, workers, journalists. Many held photos of missing children. Many were mothers whose kids had been recruited into so-called training programs by Gold Tech. Martian and the French ambassador were trying to leave when Traore appeared, photos in hand, logbooks in his pocket, and 3 terrified children. Walking beside him, covered in dust but alive. "Arrest them," Traore ordered, pointing at Martian and his executives. "Charges will include child labor, human trafficking, and criminal negligence resulting in death." Ambassador Laval rushed forward. His voice rose with panic. "You can't do this. These men have diplomatic protection per the mining agreements." Turned cold. "Show me," he said, "where it says child slavery is protected in our agreements." The ambassador had no reply. "Your company ran a hidden labor camp on Birkenhead soil. There is no protection for that." As Martian and his men were taken into custody, Traore stepped in front of the crowd. Phones were raised, live streams were rolling. "Today," he said, "we uncovered a crime beyond forgiveness. Children from our villages forced into the dark, used like tools, beaten if they failed to meet quotas. All to mine gold that never helped their families, only lined the pockets of those who already had too much." He pointed back toward the mine entrance. The real explosion wasn't from a collapse, it was the sound of children trying to escape. And rather than rescue them, this company tried to bury the truth. That night, Traore stayed at the mine. Personally, he refused to leave. Search and rescue continued under floodlights and silence. By morning, 23 children had been pulled from different tunnels. Hungry, shaking, but alive, 5 bodies were recovered. Children who hadn't made it out. Each one had a story that broke the hearts. Of even the toughest soldiers, they were told they'd be trained, given jobs, paid to help their families. Instead, they were buried alive. "How long has this been happening?" Traore asked one of the engineers, a man who had helped them quietly after seeing the truth. "Years," the man said. "Not just here, Most of the big mines use child labor. It's common knowledge in the industry. Common knowledge, Traore said slowly, and my government knew nothing. The man lowered his eyes. Not all, Mr. President, but some officials. Your predecessors there were. Arrangements, payments made. In the days that followed, inspectors uncovered similar sites at other gold tech operations. The horror of Bussorah wasn't the exception. It was the blueprint. It wasn't just child labor. It was theft on a global scale. The investigation revealed the worst. Gold tech had been forcing children into the narrowest tunnels. Using their small bodies to reach gold seems too tight for adults. But even more damning were the hidden financial records. While the company told tax authorities it was barely breaking even, internal documents told a different story. Billions of dollars worth of gold quietly smuggled out through diplomatic channels, undeclared, untaxed, and gone. President Traore didn't waste time. He called an emergency cabinet meeting that same night. Some ministers urged caution. If we go after these companies, said the finance minister, our economy will suffer. They provide jobs, they pay taxes, they build roads and infrastructure. Looked around the room. Jobs, he asked, for whom? Adults working for scraps while their children are sent underground like animals. He held up a report. These are not job creators. These are thieves. Their taxes, fake, their infrastructure. Built only for themselves, roads to their mines, power lines to their facilities. Our people see nothing. The foreign minister spoke next. Sir, we have to be realistic. If we disrupt their operations, Western nations will retaliate. Sanctions, pressure, isolation. Traore stood, ending the discussion with a single sentence. I did not become president to be realistic about child slavery. He turned to his team. Prepare for nationalization. All of it. Exactly 1 week after the Bussorah mine discovery, President Traore addressed the nation on live television and radio. He wore no suit, no medals, just his military fatigues. Citizens of Burkina Faso, he began. For decades we were told that foreign companies were our path to prosperity, that we needed their money, their knowledge, their permission. He held up a small rock, a piece of gold, or this was found by a child, he said. A child who should have been learning math, not digging for minerals. A child who should have had a future. Instead, he was buried in darkness so someone in Paris could buy a third house. He paused. The room was silent. As of today, he said, we are nationalizing every gold mining operation in Burkina Faso. Foreign companies were given 30 days to hand over control to a new, locally run National Resource Authority. Those who had invested honestly would be paid fairly. But stolen wealth, that wouldn't be reimbursed. He laid out the new plan, Burkina. Engineers and workers would run the mines. Profits would fund schools, clinics, and roads, not foreign shareholders. Every financial transaction would be public, tracked, and transparent. This won't be easy, he admitted. There will be threats, there will be pain. But we will no longer sacrifice our children to make someone else rich. The backlash was immediate. Western nations condemned the move. Financial institutions predicted collapse. France recalled its ambassador and froze Burkina Faso's accounts in European banks. This is a violation of international agreements, the French foreign minister declared. President Traore cannot just tear up contracts, but something unexpected happened. Mali, Niger, and Guinea all supported the move. China and Russia offered help to manage the newly nationalized mines. And inside Burkina Faso, the people stood with their president. Communities launched local trade systems when Western banks pulled out. Villages pooled money to keep schools and clinics open. Patriotism surged. Regional divides began to blur. It wasn't perfect. Some foreign engineers walked out. Parts and tools became harder to get. Production dropped in the short term, but Traore had prepared for that. To dot, he launched fast-track training for local workers. He brought home Burkinabe engineers from abroad with better pay and a mission they believed in. He sourced equipment from new partners outside the West, and he kept his people informed every step of the way. No lies, no hiding, just truth, even when it hurt. 3 months later, Traore invited global media to tour the new Bussorah mine. This time, there were no guards blocking the gates, no children underground, no secret tunnels. Safety had improved, workers earned fair wages. And just outside the mine, a simple school stood tall. Inside, dozens of children, including survivors from Section 12, now sat in classrooms, holding books. Instead of pickaxes, Traore stood with the press, pointing to the school. "This," he said, "is our true gold, not the metal in the ground, not the money in Swiss banks, but the future we build above the surface, in the sunlight, for our children." The press room fell silent for a moment. Then a reporter from a French outlet raised his hand. "President Traore, Western economists say your mining sector will collapse without foreign expertise. How do you respond?" Traore smiled, calm but sharp. "You mean the same expertise that gave us child labor camps?" he said. "I think we'll manage just fine without it." He turned and pointed through the window behind him, where the gold mine bustled with activity. The same Burkinabe who were doing the hard work before are doing it now. The only difference is they finally get to share in the benefit. Another journalist followed up. "The French government has frozen your country's assets in European banks. How will you survive the sanctions?" Traore didn't blink. "By remembering what real wealth is," he said, "is it numbers sitting in foreign banks? Or is it the resources beneath our feet, the skills in our hands, and our right to decide our own future?" The press conference wrapped up that Traore stayed behind, watching the children play in the schoolyard nearby just months ago. Some of them were crawling through tunnels underground. Now they were laughing, learning, writing their names. From darkness to light, from fear to hope. A small boy, maybe 11 years old, walked up to him. He still had faint scars on his face, reminders of what he'd survived. "Mr. President," the boy said, "my father works in the mine now. He says before, the gold made white men rich, but now it makes Burkina Faso strong. Is that true?" Traore knelt beside him. "What's your name, son, Thomas?" "Sir, after Thomas Sankara." Traore smiled. "Your father is right, Thomas. But the real strength isn't just in the gold, it's in knowing it belongs to us. And in deciding how we use it." Thomas nodded. "When I grow up," he said, "I want to be an engineer to help us get the gold without anyone having to go underground." "Then study hard," Traore replied, "because Burkina Faso will need engineers like you." As Traore walked away, he thought back to how it all began, a simple report about a mining accident on his desk. He hadn't known, in that moment, that his entire presidency was about to change. He hadn't known that, once he saw the truth, he'd never be able to turn back. The road ahead was still full of obstacles. Western powers would not give up control of African gold without a fight. There would be economic pressure, political games, maybe even attempts to remove him from power. But something had already started. Something no sanctions could stop. Other African countries were watching. They were re-examining their own mining deals. People were asking questions, not from ideology, but from instinct. The instinct that real sovereignty means keeping your own wealth, not exporting it while your children suffer. 6 months after nationalization, the numbers spoke for themselves. Gold production had returned to normal, but now the profits stayed in Burkina Faso. New schools were being built, not just at Busora, but across the country. Clinics were opening. Roads were finally being paved. Children were in classrooms instead of mine shafts, and the workers who once labored for foreign companies now worked with pride, knowing their sweat was building their own country, not someone else's. Back in the palace, Traore received updates daily. Yes, the economy was improving, but what moved him most were the stories, the real wins. A former child miner graduating primary school. A rural village using mining revenue to build a clean water system. A young engineer returning home from abroad to help rebuild. One evening, his aide walked in with a surprise visitor. It was Musa Wedraoui, the injured miner, who had first whispered the truth about Section 12, double quotes, "Mr. President," Musa said, standing humbly, "I came to thank you. One of the children you rescued, he's my nephew. He's in school now." "You're the one who deserves thanks," Traore replied. "Your courage started all this." Musa shook his head. "I only spoke," he said. "You acted others before you heard the same truth, but chose to ignore it." As Traore watched him walk away, he thought about choices, the quiet, early choices that define a leader's legacy. The choice to investigate a report instead of filing it away, The choice to stand up to power instead of making deals. The choice to protect children, even if it meant facing the wrath of global corporations. When he saw those kids in that mine, there was only one choice he could live with. And though the pressure hadn't stopped, though foreign leaders still plotted, and challenges came every day, Traore had no regrets. The gold of Burkina Faso would finally serve the people of Burkina Faso, and that was worth everything.